wean us off of a dependency on Venezuela and the Middle East? I don't think so. I think this guy's going to go after fossil fuels. His administration, if he's in office for four more years, I think they will go after fossil fuels very, very hard. And by that, I mean they're going to regulate them out of existence by pricing them so expensive that, our economy will suffer, jobs will suffer. I think that those are the issues that this campaign is going to hinge on.
That's an issue, the energy issue, that's clearly separates you from Debbie. You've gotten, people have, at least I've read, and I think I would have to agree that over the last few years, you've gotten to be a little tougher guy when it comes to emotion and getting out there and getting passionate when you're on the stump and when you're involved in debates and things. You're going to have some debates with Debbie. How many are they?
Well, we really don't know. We know that the last time she ran for re-election, she really only allowed for 3 debates, none on statewide TV.
Okay.
There was one at the Detroit Econ Club, so that's at a luncheon. That's not statewide TV. There's another one that was done on public television. So public television will carry it, but it won't be on like a network. And then I think there was one other opportunity, but again, it was not covered by TV live where there was a debate. My premise on this would be, in the primary, we've actively engaged in debates. We've done somewhere between 8 and 10 different forums that allows the voters to see who you are.
At the Republican primary level.
At the Republican primary level, and you're up there for, with 6, 8 of us standing up there. And the questions coming at you. I thought that was a very, very healthy process, and that's why we participated in them. And I would hope that, you could see somewhere around 5, 6 of those and have them on statewide TV with Debbie. I mean, if you did 6 debates, it'd be one for every year. All right? Every year that you would hope to be able to serve forward. Is that really too much to ask? Committing, they're typically an hour long. Debbie, are you really not willing to commit 6 hours to debating the substance, the future of this state, the future of this country? 1 hour for every year you hope to serve. She's looking at going, representing the state for 18 years.
Yeah, that's and again, I think a question that certainly worked well with President Reagan was, are you better off today than you were when Debbie Stabenow was first elected or most recently elected? Let me ask you this: another issue that's a biggie, and I don't really know where she stands, although I suspect I do, and that is on immigration reform. The President of the United States is making some sweeping changes. I'm sure he's got the support of much of his party. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I mean, what the President has decided to do is the President doesn't want to implement current law.
Which is that's a good idea?
No, that's a terrible idea. I mean, of course it's a terrible idea. I mean, more recently the President has said he's not going to implement the law anymore on parts of welfare reform. Talked to Congressman Dave Camp, who fought passionately to put in a work requirement into welfare reform. The President just said, yeah, that's not that important anymore. We're just not going to implement it.
That's the one that's going on right now, where they're talking about they're giving you credit for work for waking up, apparently.
Yeah, and so that's where they are. Those are the kinds of things that they are looking at. But on immigration, it's kind of like we need immigration overhaul. You need to secure the borders. You need to secure the workforce, meaning that you've got to put in place some system that an employer has a high degree of confidence of knowing that the person that they've just hired or that they're considering hiring is in the country legally, and you can do this with E-Verify.
So they're not at risk. And
so they're not
E-Verify is the policy or
E-Verify
that works, right?
E-Verify is very simple. It's kind of like the vision is you take a card,
okay,
you swipe it like a credit card, and the same thing that happens at the gas station will happen in your office, and it will happen as quickly that you'll get a little printout that says, this card, the holder of this card, or this card represents someone who is in the country legally and is entitled to work in the country. And you'll have a paper record, you'll have an electronic verification, and at that point in time, you're fine. And
now,
if
this isn't a new concept, though. I thought this was already in place.
it is in some places, but it's not. It has not been universally applied. And so you do those those things, and then the third thing you do, you make sure that you've got a visa program that works. It works for farmers. It works for high tech. Obviously, there's a lot of farmers in West Michigan that are dependent on migrant labor. But you can put, Herman Cain, I think, has a really good idea. If people want to come here and they want to work here on a temporary basis, migrant workers, have someone put up a fee for them when they come in. It goes into an escrow account. While they're here, they collect a certain part of their wages. Another part of their wages goes into this escrow account, and they get this escrow account when they leave the United States. We may deduct it we may deduct. There may be a partial deduct for taxes and those kinds of things, but that then provides them the incentive to come into the country legally, to work here, and then to leave.
Trust but verify.
And trust but verify is not a bad policy.
Hey, Pete,
and I think also incentivize.
Pete, one of the things that you have been talking about and you mentioned is, you said, a banker from Scottville, downtown Ludington. One of the things that at least I feel at the federal level, that we have not been represented as well in Western Michigan as maybe we should. And I guess what's your viewpoint on the role of a West Michigan candidate as far as having an effect on what's going on here on this side of the state?
Yes, I'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to believe that you would think that in the years that I represented West Michigan and Muskegon, that I represented West Michigan very, very well.
And you did, absolutely.
But I mean, this is one where you're always advocating. I mean, I think not far from here, you've got the Muskegon Airport, and you may remember that there was a time where, number one, we knew we needed a Coast Guard rescue facility on the Great Lakes. And the choice was, is it going to be down in Illinois? Is it going to be down in St. Joe, Benton Harbor area? Is it going to be in Muskegon? So you're going to do that. We fought like crazy to make sure that station came to Muskegon, and it did.
Clout and connections help. Experience and knowing how to get the job done matters.
It does. And so it's not that you're, there's always two separate decisions, and probably many more as you go through this process, in different areas. The first decision is, is the federal government going to spend the money? And a lot of those times, my answer was no, I'm against it. But then, I may have been outvoted, and so the decision was, well, the federal government's going to spend that money. It's kind of like, okay. And then I'd go to bat to make sure we got as much of it back to West Michigan. And then sometimes people would criticize you and say, well, you voted against the spending. It's kind of like, yeah, I thought it was a bad idea, but if you're going to spend it, I'd like some of it to come back to West Michigan. And they said, well, that's hypocritical. And it's kind of like, no, because it would only be hypocritical because I voted against it, the people of West Michigan didn't have to pay for it. Their taxes would be reduced because their congressman wasn't supporting these programs, and so they won't benefit from them. But it's the people of West Michigan. They were putting in just as much money as anybody else, and if the federal government was going to spend that money, they had as much right to getting that money back into their communities, whether it's for roads, bridges, or whatever, but they had every right to get that money back.
Well, I would just say that it's the same thing for people talking about, and I'm one of them, advocating a reduction in compensation for our county commissioners. If in fact I'm unsuccessful at having that, achieving that, I'm still going to take the money. I will still advocate otherwise. So we are running a little, just about at the end. I want one other thing that I think is important that a lot of people don't realize. You are one of the few, the congressman at the time, and one of the people who was very correct. You voted against No Child Left Behind.
That's right.
If you want to touch on it for just a second.
Sure. I mean, No Child Left Behind, in many ways, it's exactly like Obamacare. With No Child Left Behind, we promised America that every child would be reading at grade level, by 2011, 2012. Just give it to the federal government. And what we found is that it became a law that never worked. There are still children that are being left behind. Some would say that the educational system is worse today than what it maybe was 10 or 11 years ago. And now we're looking at Obamacare, and people are saying, here's another promise. Everybody's going to get high quality, health care through the federal government. And in 10 or 11 years, we're going to find out the system is broken. In each of these areas, don't take the authority away from individuals, from communities, and that, and give it and cede it to the federal government. I voted against No Child Left Behind. It has failed our children. It has created, in certain communities, environments where 25, 40% of our kids are graduating graduating high school without basic. Without the basic skills that they're going to need.
Well, you bucked the party and you bucked the president on that one, and I think most people agree that you not only were strong, but you were right in that. And you've got a long history. Yeah. Anyone who's interested in doing some homework, the internet's got all the answers. But Congressman Hoekstra is truly one of the great conservatives of modern day. And my best wishes to you, Pete. And August 7th, folks, make sure you vote if you haven't already voted on your. On the absentee ballot. So thank you so much for visiting with us.
Great. Good being with you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Pete.
Yeah, thanks.